usirudi nyuma wewe, tunaongea kwa watu sema tuneni mbele, tunaomba viongozi pamoja. Africa, Africities, endeni tujiunge. Kisumu, Kisumu pacho, Kisumu dala. Well, from east to west, we have the power to rise. Endeni tujiunge. Kisumu, Kisumu pacho, Kisumu dala. From east to west, we have cities. Endeni tujiunge. Kisumu, Kisumu pacho, Kisumu dala. Kisumu pacho, Kisumu dala.
Thank you so much to our production team, the Permanent Presidential Music Commission, and the Kisumu County for that well-elaborate theme song. Let's applaud them with a more loud applause. Thank you. Your Excellency, allow me now to request we focus on the screens for video messages. I'll request that we play them back to back. We'll start with the Africities Ambassador Lupita Nyong'o, to be followed by United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Her Excellency Mrs. Amina Mohammed, and the U.S. Special President Envoy on Climate, John Kerry. The video messages.
Firsthand. It has so much to offer, and I can potentially. Hello all, and welcome to the 9th Africities Summit in Kisumu. My name is Lupita Nyong'o, and I have the pleasure of being the Africities Goodwill Ambassador this year. Now, Kisumu County is my ancestral home, and I have witnessed its potential firsthand. It has so much to offer, and I can finally see its vibrant energy being tapped with the radical leadership of its current governor, my father, Professor Peter Anyang Nyong'o. Well, I'm biased. You will see for yourself. I'm honored to stand by his side now as he hosts this important summit, as he has so often stood by mine. I could not think of a better place to come together to discuss tangible solutions for the challenges facing Africa and its intermediary cities than the Africities Summit. Over the next 5 days, you will participate in interactive sessions. You will hear from inspirational speakers, take workshops, implement projects, and dream up the Africa we want to see. One where everyone has access to food, healthcare, education, housing, public safety, and peace. On this journey with you from afar as we lay the groundwork for Africa's renaissance. Now, let's begin.
Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Macky Sall, President of the Republic of Senegal, Your Excellency Moussa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, Excellencies, friends and colleagues, it is my great honor to address the opening session of the Africities Summit. Thank you to the Government of Kenya, to the County of Kisumu, and the United Cities and Local Governments, Africa, for hosting this important summit in the wonderful city of Kisumu. We are meeting in challenging times, marked by multiple interlinked crises and a proliferation of conflicts. At the same time, the world is in the midst of key transitions, from energy to the digital world. Among the emerging trendy lines, urbanization is a defining megatrend of the 21st century. We need to take advantage of it. The recent review of the New Urban Agenda provides insights into what a bottom-up approach to sustainable development in Africa could look like. Recognizing the centrality of the New Urban Agenda to other global agendas, notably our efforts to combat climate change. Acknowledging that COVID-19 has deepened inequalities and elevated the importance of cities. And addressing the gaps in capacities and financing countries face to achieve the sustainable urbanization. Africa is projected to have the world's fastest growing urban population over the next 30 years. Cities are producing more than 60% of GDP in Africa, and the rapid trend of urbanization across the continent offers new opportunities to accelerate economic and social transformations. Equitable, inclusive, and prosperous cities need to harness the full potential and participation of all citizens, especially women and our youth. The power of community action, especially youth action, which is our most important and dynamic human resource, can make a difference. While large and megacities will continue to attract people, effectively harnessing urbanization processes hinges on intermediary cities like Kisumu. Indeed, these cities must be at the heart of national urban strategies. Health emergencies, the climate crises and conflicts are increasingly urban phenomena. Local governments in Africa must be provided with the means and the resources to confront these challenges and deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. Successful implementation of the SDGs requires unprecedented ownership by local actors. Together with UCLG and other partners, the United Nations has launched a Local 2030 Coalition, a platform designed to support and accelerate SDG delivery at the local level. We invite all of you to join this effort. Acting together, we can leverage well-planned and well-managed cities as engines for sustainable development and innovation here and across Africa. I thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts as you gather for this year's United Cities and Local Governments Africa Conference. To the presidents, mayors, and everyone else who has gathered for this meeting, thank you for your leadership and your dedication to this issue. It's fitting that you are all gathering some 6 months before Egypt will host COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and that you'll focus the world's attention on the tremendous risks and opportunities ahead for Africa's growing cities of all sizes. I'm particularly grateful that you're shining a light on the role subnational actors can and frankly must play in the climate fight. Local leaders and community groups have always helped lead us forward on this issue, ever since I can remember being part of helping to organize the first Earth Day in 1970. And that is why, in the Paris Agreement, at COP26 in Glasgow and elsewhere, the world has recognized the critical role that you must continue to play in this fight. Here in Africa, you see the urgency of this moment. You're living it. You know the world is simply not moving fast enough to avoid the worst consequences of the climate crisis and to hold the global temperature rise within the 1.5 degree limit. We're simply not getting this job done globally in the way that we ought to be. And you also know that you and your citizens are all on the front lines of the crisis. 17 of the world's 20 most climate vulnerable countries can be found in Africa. And that's the case even though 48 nations in sub-Saharan Africa are responsible for only 0.55% of total emissions. The most recent IPCC report told us the climate crisis is already here. You already knew that because you lived through it. Extreme heat waves, devastating droughts, changing planting seasons, and more punishing storms. But here's the good news. The IPCC also told us that we still have time to secure a cleaner, healthier, safer planet for all of us. That work starts here in Africa, with the world's fastest growing populations and economies. Our climate crisis is also an opportunity to seize smarter growth and better jobs. Take adaptation as an example. Preparing people for this warmer world can save lives and livelihoods, but it's also just plain old common sense. Roads, bridges, and ports can only spur economic growth and reduce poverty next year if they are built to survive the storms of tomorrow. Critical efforts are already underway in Africa, from Rwandan farmers using more accurate forecasting to Tunisian ports preparing for rising seas and flood risks. To support the adaptation work we have to engage in, at COP26, President Biden announced his President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience. It's known as PREPARE. PREPARE brings together our diplomatic, development, and technical expertise to help more than 500 million people, including many millions in Africa, manage the impacts of the climate crisis by 2030. When it comes to finance, President Biden also pledged last year to quadruple U.S. international public climate finance to over $11 billion per year by 2024. And the private sector is finally showing up with the money that we need to invest in order to accelerate this transition, including in Africa, where multi-trillion-dollar industries are being created. In all of this work, we will continue to follow your lead. Over 1,000 cities and local governments, including many of Africa's major urban centers, have now committed to the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience campaigns. From strengthening green buildings in Cape Town to building water resilience in Addis and Kigali, you are showing us what is both necessary and possible. My friends, we know that human choices have caused this crisis, and therefore we know that human choices can put us back on the right path. That is exactly what you are helping to do today. So on behalf of President Biden and the entire United States government, thank you for your partnership, your friendship, and most of all, your leadership and your dedication to this effort. We are going to win this fight. And when we do, it will be because of leaders like you in Africa and across the planet. Thank you.
Welcome to the second most important democratic organization on the African continent after the African Union. Welcome to United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, the voice of local Africa. The umbrella represents nearly 350 million African citizens. the vision of UCLG Africa is building African unity and driving African development through the grassroots. GADD-EPA lays out the objectives of the organization: promote decentralization, structuring local government associations, building an Africa of peoples and territories, organize exchange platforms such as the Africities Summit, the governance, advocacy, and decentralized development program for Africa. GADD-EPA is the strategic vision for UCLG Africa, which aims to build Africa from the roots. UCLG Africa has developed a series of programs and interventions, including the mobilization of strategies, methods, and tools to support our members under our 7 areas of intervention: local economy and finance, climate, biodiversity and food security, gender and youth, basic service and sustainable development goal, migration, culture, peace and security. 10 reasons to join UCLG Africa. Support to decentralization, multiple expertise, training, projects, financing, coaching, territorial assistance, advocacy, dialogue between elected representatives, networks. Welcome to United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, the voice of local Africa.
Let us appreciate that well presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much. Your Excellency, with your permission, allow me, with all humility and my singular duty, to invite the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Mauso Faki, to make his remarks. Welcome, Your Excellency. Let's appreciate His Excellency as he takes the podium.
Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Excellency President Ford, former President of the Seychelles, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, Special African Union Envoy for Infrastructure, Madame Christine Mban-Doutoumé, Présidente des cités et gouvernements locaux unis d'Afrique, Ms. Maimouna Mohamed Sherif, Undersecretary General and Executive Director of UN Habitat, Professor Anyana Ngo, Governor of Kisumu County, distinguished ministers, regional governors and mayors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, President Uhuru Kenyatta, dear brother, for inviting me to this auspicious official opening of the 9th Summit of Africa Cities held in this magnificent intermediary city of Kisumu. President, you show once more your leadership and dedication for Kenya and for the implementation of African Union Agenda 2063. And thank you for encouraging me to speak English. I would like to congratulate the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, the Government of the Republic of Kenya, governors of Kenya and the Kisumu County Government, for the unprecedented organization of the summit and the warm hospitality extended to us. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, embraces the theme of this summit of Africities, of the role of intermediary cities in the implementation of Agenda 2030 of the United Nations and Agenda 2063 of the African Union. Intermediary cities have a crucial role on urbanization policy and have become a renewed subject of interest for governments, international organizations, and academics. Intermediary cities are growing fast and have the greatest potential to shape the urban future, and yet they are often overlooked. Much attention has been paid to capital cities, which are the political, social, and economic centers of a country. As a result, our economies fail to realize the benefits that a more balanced spatial development and intercity collaboration can generate. The growth of intermediary cities implies an increase in wealth, inequalities, need for housing, infrastructure and urban services, pollution, need for decent jobs, increased waste production, and therefore, the role needs to be recognized and clarified. If left alone to manage themselves without a clear role, cities will manifest into chaotic development. Cities have their unique challenges and potentials. Therefore, clarification of their role should take into consideration their peculiarities. Ladies and gentlemen, I am particularly pleased to see that the summit has chosen the theme linking the global UN agenda to Africa's agenda as a template of how to think global while acting locally to African aspiration and distinct cultural realities. Africa, like the rest of the world, has committed itself to the implementation of the United Nations agenda and the new urban agenda. Furthermore, the continent's agenda 2063 outlines not only our aspiration for the future, but also identifies key flagship programs which can boost Africa's economic growth and development and lead to the rapid transformation of the continent. The three agendas have powerfully captured the role of cities and their envisioned cities that fulfill their social, economic, ecological, and political function in an inclusive manner. At the continent level, the African Union has developed a regional framework for the implementation of the new urban agenda. The AU has developed also the African Charter on Values and Principles of Decentralization, Local Governance, and Local Development to facilitate implementation of decentralization, which remains a challenge in many countries. This instrument serves as a sound foundation for guiding the development of our cities, as well as clarifying your role as local authorities in intermediary cities. With your experience and key role as mayors and governors, it is now up to you to make sure that these valuable tools become an integral part of your urban management to ensure the decentralization and urbanization we want. As you deliberate here on the shores of Lake Victoria, which is both a trade route, transnational water highway for cities beyond Kisumu, it is also a reminder of the impacts of climate change on our lives and livelihoods. I also want to remind you that regional integration is a fundamental objective of Agenda 2063. The African Free Trade Area Agreement, AFCFTA, can be seen in action here in Kisumu, a vibrant city that trades with neighboring counties and countries, facilitating the free movement of goods and people for the shared prosperity far beyond the shores of Lake Victoria. Ladies and gentlemen, may solidarity remains the engine that drives the African city experience, that of community and cooperation. As I conclude, it is my hope that as you share experiences and take stock of how local governments, policymakers, and citizens are working together to meet these aspirations, that they remain underpinned by the principle of African solidarity that we brought with us from our villages. It is my appeal, therefore, to you, honorable ministers, mayors, and senior government officials, to prioritize the signing and ratification of the Charter on the principle of decentralization and local governance and that of public service and administration. I wish you fruitful deliberations and thank you for your kind attention. Merci, asante, erokamana.
Thank you. Thank you so much, His Excellency Musa Faki, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Thank you for your candid words, sir. Your Excellency, it's now my humble duty to invite the Cabinet Secretary for Defense and the Acting Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, to invite Your Excellency to deliver your opening official address. Welcome, Cabinet Secretary.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Musa Faki, the Chairperson of the AU, who has really captured all the protocols here that I wish to adopt. Ladies and gentlemen, may I take this opportunity to welcome you all to Kisumu County and Kisumu City, and to join my brother, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, the governor of this great county, who has welcomed you here, and with whom I'm the co-host. And I want to say that I have a very long speech here. My role really was just to welcome you all and to welcome His Excellency, the President, to speak to you. But I noticed when Maimuna was speaking, there was a lot of excitement when she talked about the possibility of having a woman president someday. And my guest sitting next to me were asking me, why are people so excited in Kenya? So I was saying, if you are Kenyan, I would have asked you, are you strangers in Jerusalem? Because yesterday something historical happened in our country. And Your Excellency Musa Faki, you are special envoy for infrastructure. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga nominated a woman known as Martha Karua to be the next Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. That informs you why there's so much excitement in Kenya today. Then, apart from Maimuna, as she was speaking, I noticed a lot of excitement again when Amina Mohammed, Her Excellency, the Deputy Secretary General, spoke about intermediary cities and urban centers being the engines of economic transformation of Africa, of growing Africa from the bottom up. So someone asked me, why are people excited about that? Because we have an election coming around the corner. When you speak about bottom up, it might mean something very different. But I don't think that is what Amina Mohammed meant. She was saying the true meaning of bottom up is devolution. It's bringing more resources down to our counties, to our subnational governments, and turning them into engines of socioeconomic transformation of our country and our counties. And under the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta, that is what we have been doing in Kenya for the last 10 years. And we want to welcome you so that we share with you our experience in devolution and in decentralization. And that is what we'll be doing in the course of today. But I just wanted to also welcome you to Kisumu as a city that has great history. Many of you, maybe for the first time, you are coming to this beautiful lakeside city, and you're wondering where it has been all this time. Because in Africa, we've been looking at our capital cities. Kenya was honored in 2006 to host Africities, but that was in Nairobi. And we've been to the other capitals of Africa where we've held Africities, and we're very grateful to UCLGA for giving us the opportunity as Kenya, as Kisumu with Professor Nyang'nyong, to be the first intermediary city in Africa to host Africities. The scripture said, who much is given, much is expected. Indeed, you put your faith in us, but you also gave us a lot of responsibility. And we know much is expected of us. And I must thank all those we've worked together to ensure that this day is a success. And I must thank, starting with Professor Nyong'o and his team. You have done well, Prof. If I was a voter in Kisumu, I would have said, teach tire tano tena. You have done extremely well. But my colleagues in national government, in cabinet, I must thank you, because we have walked a long way under the leadership of our president to make this a success. And I want to single out my colleague C.S. Macharia, with whom we have worked, with his PSs in charge of housing, PS Hinga, with the PSs in charge of roads, PSs in charge of transport to expand our airport here, to do our roads, and to make this day a success. I must also thank my PS, Korir. I think he's here with us. He's done a wonderful, wonderful job with our devolution team to make this day a success. And before I invite His Excellency the President, just to give you a little history about Kisumu. This city has a great history, like other cities in Africa, in Europe, and across the world. It has a long history that stretches back to the Victorian era. We had two Englishmen who came here in 1858, Speke and Barton, and they said they had discovered Lake Victoria, and they named it after their queen. Before they came, the community living here, the Luo community, called Lake Victoria Namlolwe. The Luyas lived here, they called it Enyanja ya Walude. When you go to the Rwandese, they call the lake Nyanza. But Speke and Barton came and said they were the first people to discover Lake Victoria, and they named it after their queen. That is how Lake Victoria came to be. The second thing that happened was the British now came in to open up the hinterland of Africa to connect the port of Mombasa and the port of Kisumu. And this is one lesson we want to take away as Africa, the importance of infrastructure in developing intermediary cities, in growing intermediary cities. Indeed, Kisumu grew as an accident, and it came out of a huge debate in the British Parliament when Henry Lobaloch called this a gigantic folly. Building a train from Mombasa to Kisumu looked like an impossibility then. In 1896, they started. And it was opposed by the British Parliament. But it went on through a lot of challenges. Winston Churchill came and said, this was not a folly. In fact, it was a brilliant conception. And it was an art of the British tradition of muddling through things. So they muddled through a lot of politics back home to get on the ground. There were lions who were man-eaters in Savo. They muddled through the Savo. They had a Sesefly attack. Faced the Maasai warriors, very fierce Nandi warriors. But they muddled through it, and by 1901, they arrived here in Kisumu. It was then called Port Florence. As we speak today, this is one of the most transformative infrastructural developments in Africa. We are happy that after our president took over, we have continued to invest as national government in this infrastructure. We have a standard gauge railway that has been built during this administration, all the way from Mombasa. It's now in Naivasha. It will come to Kisumu. We know that it was not easy to do that, but again, we are transforming this city because of that infrastructure. Investing in ports, as Musa Faki has said, it's about ports, it's about roads, it's about the rail, it's about water infrastructure. And this is one lesson we want to take away as we look at the future of intermediary cities in our continent to transform it. So I want to thank you. There will be many sessions where we want to share experiences about our journey in devolution, about the success of decentralization in this country. There are many breakaway sessions, there are many delegations that we have engaged. Please take your time, let us engage, share experiences and learn from each other. Let us also look at how we can look at the challenges facing us, how we can overcome these challenges, and how we can address the vulnerabilities that are going to face our populations as they move into their cities. Experts are saying by 2050, we'll have over 60% of our populations in these intermediary cities. So we must prepare for that. And the role of intermediary cities in realization of the AU Agenda 2063 and the EU Agenda 2030 is at the center of our discussions today. Please let us share, but also take time to enjoy the beautiful lake out there, Lake Victoria. It's the biggest tropical lake in Africa and the second largest freshwater lake in the world after Lake Superior. Take your time and enjoy our hospitality. And it's now my pleasure and honor to invite His Excellency the President to address us. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, thank you. Please be seated, thank you. Your Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, my dear friend and brother, Danny Fore, the President of the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, Christine Ba Dutume, the Governor of Kisumu, Professor Anyang', all Excellencies, delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying it is a great honor to welcome you all to Kenya and to our lake city of Kisumu for this 9th edition of the Africities Summit. Indeed, I join everybody else in thanking the county government of Kisumu, led by Professor Anyang', and indeed the people of Kisumu for hosting this conference, and indeed for the warm reception and hospitality which I am sure they will extend to all our visitors from across the globe. We are convening here at a very unique time in the history of our region and the world, and our efforts to build our economies back from the devastating effects of COVID-19 pandemic have been slowed by a myriad of events on the international scene, events which in many circumstances have put multilateralism as we know it under immense stress. However, I do believe that this summit reaffirms our resilience and our shared common goal as brothers and sisters within the African continent of making our towns, our cities, and indeed our metropolitan areas better. We have amongst us delegates from approximately 110 countries from all over the world. And I believe that this is a summit not just of thinkers, but also of doers. And we are therefore called upon to bring tangible, practical, and sustainable solutions to the challenges facing Africa's urban areas. Recognizing that this noble goal is not a task solely for governments, we also have amongst us members from civil society organizations, representatives of our African diaspora, economic actors, policy experts, researchers, academicians, financial institutions, as well as development partners. These diverse actors all share in our objective of strengthening the role of local and regional governments in the development of our continent, as well as accelerating the integration and unity of Africa by creating linkages between nations and cities on our continent. So on behalf of the people of Kenya, I am particularly grateful to the leadership of the United Cities and local governments of Africa for choosing Kisumu as a host city for this year's Africities Summit, the first such intermediary city to host such a conference. For centuries, this particular intermediary city of Kisumu has been a melting pot of different cultures, a hub for trade, and a gateway into Eastern and Central Africa. And so in this context, I do invite you all to join in this continental moment of taking stock and reflecting, learning, as well as planning under this year's theme of the role of intermediary cities of Africa in the implementation of our Agenda 2030 of the United Nations and our very own African Union Agenda 2063. This year's summit is most apt as the summit comes at a time that is critical when our continent of Africa is facing rapid urbanization and the challenges of future cities are increasingly coming into sharp focus, more so after the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. Cities and local authorities around the world have played a key role in the response to COVID-19. They were our first line of defense. They were at the forefront of our prevention and containment measures, the vanguard of our humanitarian response, as well as taking the first steps towards building back livelihoods post-COVID. Local authorities therefore proved to be an indispensable ring in the governance chain and an instrumental part of pandemic prevention and response actions. Consequently, time is ripe for scaling up the role of intermediary cities as the next frontiers of African urbanization and development. I say this because in Africa, an unprecedented rate of urbanization has propelled intermediary cities to stand at approximately 1,086. Intermediary cities like Kisumu, where we are today, are home to approximately 174 million people, representing about 36% of our continent's total urban population and contributing about 40% of our continent's GDP. So as we convene to deliberate on how we can establish a shift towards a new urban paradigm and unleash the potential of intermediary cities in fostering inclusive development and the realization of our SDGs and all other social economic development initiatives, we must keep in mind that Africa is becoming increasingly urbanized. The traditional rural focus within development plans risk marginalizing a growing section of our population, one which will soon be the majority. This is not to say that our rural areas should take a back seat. Rather, it is to recognize that our development plans must be in tune with the realities of rural-urban migration and the concentration of large populations in small and often unplanned settlements in metropolitan areas. This calls for proper planning to create smart cities that meet future urbanization challenges, plans that address the emerging needs related to food security, health, shelter, environmental conservation, as well as infrastructure. The need for proper urban planning was clearly demonstrated during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, when it became necessary to support those living in informal settlements in our cities and urban areas with food rations, as well as the provision of sanitary facilities. So, ladies and gentlemen, the challenge of our time is therefore to make our intermediary cities and municipalities sustainable and fit for all our citizens. Accordingly, this summit has the task of providing the continent with a comprehensive and achievable roadmap on how our intermediary cities can contribute towards the implementation of the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, as well as our own African Union Agenda 2063. Here in Kenya, for example, the national government has over the last 5 years been implementing projects and programs geared towards improvement of lives of our people through the achievement of the SDGs. This has been under the auspices of our National Economic Blueprint, our Kenya Vision 2030 and its medium-term plan, the Big Four, and the agenda espouses provision of a decent roof over many more heads at affordable costs, at affordable health care for all, value addition by increasing manufacturing and jobs, as well as ensuring food security for all our people. We have also embarked on a slum upgrade program that is spread across our country, notably in our capital city of Nairobi and the intermediary cities of Mombasa and Kisumu, as well as our youngest city, that being the city of Nakuru. These concerted actions have been through the Kenya Devolution Support Program, the Urban Support Program, the Kenya Slum Upgrade Program, and the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvements Program. So to achieve the goals of this convention, we must make this, the 9th edition of the Africities Summit, a questioning summit. And in that regard, I would like to propose a 12-point questioning framework for all participants. And this framework should guide us in understanding the problem and charting the way forward. Firstly, how do we reinvigorate the management of urbanization, the electricity feed, provide affordable and inclusive transport, provide high quality and accessible education and health care, and improve the standards of water and sanitation provision within our intermediary cities? Secondly, how do we accelerate the reduction of extreme poverty in our cities? Third, how can national and central governments support in mobilization of resources to unlock effective delivery of services by our intermediary cities? Fourth, how can we best develop human capital in the intermediary cities in the sectors of administration, planning, and governance with a view to sustaining the momentum so far gathered towards the achievement of our SDGs? Fifth, what is the best way for us to create and sustain conducive environments for the accelerated growth of decentralization and evolution across our continent without compromising our national cohesion? Sixth, how do we reposition technology and connectivity as a driver to the achievement of SDGs in providing opportunities in our urban areas. A seventh, how can we enhance the voice of key stakeholders, including civil society, the private sector, academia, grassroots organizations, in providing capacity and impetus in the implementation of our SDGs. 8, how do we increase awareness of the negative effects of climate change and guarantee environmental equity for future generations? 9, what legal and policy frameworks should we establish so as to foster the robust and sustainable development of intermediary cities? And 10, what incentives should we put in place to enhance the competitiveness of our intermediary cities as the new frontiers and hubs for innovation, trade, and tourism? 11, what critical steps can we put in place to enhance disaster management in our urban areas, including those that may deal with pandemics similar to COVID-19? And 12, as we scale up and develop our urban areas in general, and in particular our intermediary cities, what strategies and policies are required to confront the threats of radicalization and terrorism, especially in the urban areas, including our intermediary cities. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my remarks, I would like to underscore that this must be a decade of action. The time is ripe for scaling up our efforts in support of intermediary cities and also in promoting greater synergies between local, national, and international efforts geared towards accelerating the realization of our SDGs. In every community and nation in Africa, there are sayings that recognize that in unity there is strength, and there is no challenge, no matter how seemingly insurmountable, can prevail over unified and united actions. I therefore urge all of you today to unite in the face of one of the greatest challenges of our time, that through concerted and synergetic actions, Africa's intermediary cities will play their rightful role in driving the implementation of Agenda 2030 and the African Union Agenda 2063. So, ladies and gentlemen, with those few remarks, it is indeed my great pleasure and honor to declare this 9th Africities Summit officially open, and I really look forward to the fruitful deliberations that I'm sure will take place here in this great city of Kisumu. Thank you, and God bless Africa. Thank you very much.
May we give His Excellency a moment as he takes his seat. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your candid words and well-presented remarks to all of us. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Please be seated. With your permission, sir, Your Excellency, we will now move to our next segment of our program, which is the high-level dialogue on infrastructure and urban development. And I kindly wish to introduce the moderator and invite him to the podium. And that is none other than the Kisumu City County Governor, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, who will take us through the next program. Welcome, Prof. The video.
Welcome to Kisumu, Kenya's third largest city and the capital of Kisumu County. The lakeside city is a place of passion, pleasure, and fun, where humanity interacts with development, where rural hinterland interacts with the city.
It is very easy to move in and out of Kisumu.
The road network is top-notch. The city is strategically placed. It is the gateway to Western Kenya and the entire Great Lakes region, thanks to Kisumu International Airport, Kisumu Port, and rail transport.
The whole package for Kisumu is ready. We're ready to say we want to be a significant city in Kenya, in Africa, and in the world at large.
And ready indeed for the upcoming Africities conference.
Having a conference like that with about 8,000 to 10,000 people visiting Kisumu is a great economic stimulus.
My administration, Governor, will extend to the county government of Kisumu every support in order for you to be able to showcase Kenya and Kisumu to Africa and the rest of the world.
There is ample accommodation in Kisumu, from high-end hotels and resorts to guest houses and apartments.
We've got several hotels that have opened up into the region. In Kisumu alone, we have 324 hotels. And they have different rates.
There are also so many magical places within and around the city, with those in the neighboring counties within reach. The presence of local and international commercial banks, supermarkets, malls, and open-air markets is a clear indication of a city ripe for business.
The word Kisumu came from the Luo word to trade, or to do commerce, or to borrow.
Hospitals are being upgraded through the Ministry of Health and Public Sanitation.
Kisumu is going to be a buzzing port city, and therefore that means there's a lot of opportunities.
In recreation, Kisumu All-Stars Football Club stands out. Not to forget hockey, volleyball, golf, basketball, and handball, among others. Key educational institutions include the University of Nairobi, Maseno University, Kenyatta University, Mount Kenya University, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, Uzima University, and Kisumu National Polytechnic. Kisumu County in general is rich in agriculture too, with rice farming and sugarcane farming contributing to the county's socio-economic growth and has room for potential investors.
People are positive about investing in Kisumu in all areas. In agriculture, in industry, manufacturing, maritime transport. Housing is a big area of investment. In tourism.
Kisumu, the land of passion, welcomes you to Africities 2022 as we celebrate metropolises of the future.
Let us welcome Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. We've seen the hospitality of our county.
Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Before I call the panel, whose keynote speaker will be the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, our former Prime Minister, I'd like to confess to His Excellency the President that I was very jealous of his speech. It is professorial. And as a professor, I wished I had delivered the same speech. I'm also very jealous of my friend Eugene Wamalwa for being so spontaneous, but so factual and so analytical. I guess this cabinet has become a professorial cabinet. But let me assure you that the next cabinet of Raila Odinga and Martha Karua will be a cabinet of brains and deeds. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here to introduce the high-level dialogue on infrastructure and urban development, whose brainchild was the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, who will lead the panel discussion. In this panel, high-level panel, we have with us as participants in this panel the chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency Moussa Faki, who has already spoken here, His Excellency Danny Faure, former president of Seychelles, who is actually a Ugandan-born citizen and is a native of East Africa par excellence. I would also like to introduce here Madam Maimuna Mohammed Sharif. She's already spoken here, but as you know, as she was speaking, she's the executive director of UN Habitat, and UN Habitat has been very keenly involved in developing infrastructure in Kisumu and other urban areas. In Kenya, we have had two gurus of infrastructure. When we were in the Kibaki cabinet, the right was the Minister for Housing, Public Works and Roads. And I assure you that the roads expansion you are seeing today under His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta was started then. When I was becoming governor in the county of Kisumu, I had a manifesto. And I said that I would like to expand maritime transport on the lake. The day I was elected, I went to the lake and looked at it and the harbor, and I said, what mistake did I make? This is a matter of task I will never undertake. Thanks to the Prime Minister and the President. If you go to the port today, it's a wonderful work of a modern harbor that has already started increasing maritime transport on the lake. And we do believe that it forms the backbone of the economy of Kisumu. I'd like to give applause to the two gentlemen. It is this keen relationship between infrastructure and urban development that we see all the time. As a road is being built, markets emerge. These markets later will become urban centers. If they do so spontaneously, we have problems. If they do so with a planned future, we have opportunities. The essence of this panel today is exactly to discuss that possibilities of exploiting opportunities given by the infrastructure already being developed in a country like Kenya to be the backbone of the provision of sustainable and resilient urban areas in the future of our nation. Thank you very much. Let me now invite here the Right Honourable Raila Odinga to come and take his chair and give his speech subsequently to the panel. Let me also invite to come and take the chair the former president of Seychelles. Let me invite also the chairperson of African Union, Mr. Faki, and Madam Maimuna to come and sit over here so that you can see them as the discussions goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, the Chairperson of the African Union, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I, like those who have spoken before me, equally very delighted to welcome you here to the city of Kisumu. The minister has told you that Kisumu was once called Port Florence. What he did not tell you was that Florence was the wife of the engineer Mr. Patterson, who eventually killed the man-eaters of Savo. And she was the one who laid the last sleeper at the railway at the port of Kisumu. She was called Florence Patterson. Hence, the town was called Port Florence. Now, I'm going to just make a few remarks about infrastructure that will guide our discussion here this morning at the panel. We recognize infrastructure development as a priority key ingredient for economic development, regional trade, and integration of the continent. Infrastructure is what will make or break the continental free trade area. I was appointed by His Excellency Mr. Mohammed as the African Union High Representative on Infrastructural Development. What are my functions? I act as a catalyst to ensure that the infrastructural projects which have been identified by the African Union are implemented on a timely basis. The importance of infrastructure has already been mentioned. I want to say that rightfully, therefore, giving Africa a world-class infrastructure is enshrined in the African Union Agenda 2063. It is projected that by the year 2050, that is about 28 years from now, Africa's population will hit 2 billion people. Well over this, that's 50% of the 2 billion people will be youth below the age of 18, and most of them are going to be living in cities. It's therefore obvious that we are already out of time to have our cities and urban areas connected by road, rail, air, ICT, and waterways. That also means we are not prepared for meaningful industrialization, urbanization, and economic growth that all depend on requisite infrastructure. As you know, in 2018, I accepted this appointment. In the same year, the African countries agreed to establish the African Continental Free Trade Area. According to INECA, the African Free Trade Area will increase the value of inter-African trade by between 15 to 25%. Right now, Africa trades very little with itself. It is estimated that intra-African trade is just about 15%. Inter-European trade is 70%. Inter-Asian trade stands at 50%. Even South America stands at 25%. But why does Africa trade very little with itself? Well, the major reason is infrastructure. They don't have adequate infrastructure that connects these African countries. As an example, Kenya lies on the East African coast. Next to Kenya, there's a country called Central African Republic. Between Kenya and the Central African Republic, there's only South Sudan. Yet, for Kenya to trade with the Central African Republic, you need to find a ship that will be able to take your goods across the Cape and along the West African coast, the Cameroonian port of Douala, and then by road to Bangui in Central African Republic. And the British are much faster there than you. And that's why there in Bangui, they drink Kenyan tea, Christian as English breakfast tea, or French coffee. So what we want to talk about today is what AU is trying to do And we are dealing here with major infrastructure projects which have been identified under what we call PIDA, Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa. This consists of highways, high-speed railway network, ICT network, that is fiber optic network, the continent, the open air skies, the continent, and the waterways. These are the major projects in the continent. There are several highways that connect different African cities. You've got Dakar to Lagos, Lagos to Mombasa. You've got Cape to Cairo, Tunis to the Cape, through Khartoum to Djibouti. And there are missing links along those highways. There are several others. There are a total of 40 different highways that we're talking about. And then there's a high-speed railway network that connects different parts of the continent. An example I want to give you here is called LAPSET, the Lamu Port, South Sudan, and the Ethiopia Transit Corridor. That, when fully implemented, phase 1 and phase 2, because phase 1 is Lamu Port to Juba in South Sudan, the other one to Addis Ababa. The second one goes through Central African Republic all the way to Cameroon and Port of Kribi, creating a land bridge that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean and opening up the interior of the continent to wider trade, to Chad, to Niger, to Congo Republic and DRC, to Sudan, and then on to Egypt. There are several others that are planned. In as far as energy is concerned, Africa is energy deficient. Right now, the total installed capacity in the continent of Africa is 145 gigawatts. That is almost equal to South Korea's 130 gigawatts. But South Korea has only got a population of 52 million people. Africa has got 1 billion people, meaning that we are not fully prepared for our modernization, which is going to come whether we like it or not. So we need, therefore, to invest more in energy generation as well. We are planning also to construct 19 new ports on the continent. Also, about 20 new airports, improving the air transport in the continent. Currently, Africa, the air transport in Africa is too expensive. Some of them because of bureaucracies in the continent, structure on the ground. This is another area where we need more investment. So I want to say, conclude here by saying that Africa has a need for more investment in infrastructure development. There is capacity deficiency. It is estimated by African Development Bank that Africa needs about $170 billion per annum to be able to meet our infrastructure needs. So the deficit stands at about $110 billion. And that's why I have proposed the establishment of African Infrastructure Fund. And we've been working here with several institutions to create this fund. We have established that there are a lot of capital lying idle on the continent. sovereign funds, pension funds, and insurance funds. So we are working towards tapping into these resources so that Africa can be self-sufficient in terms of funding, that Africa does not have to depend and rely on funding from just international financial institutions or bilaterals, some of which proved to be very, very expensive to African countries. So with these many remarks, I'm now happy to now sit down with the panelists, and then we can start this discussion. Thank you.
Colleague, the panelists, that is the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, the High Representative of African Union on Infrastructure. Here we have the Chairman of African Union himself, my dear friend, His Excellency Moussa Faki. The first comment on infrastructure dialogue and development dialogue today, after that presentation, the Prime Minister, shall be from His Excellency Moussa Faki, Chairman of AU. We shall all speak sitting here we are. You have the microphone so that we can dialogue among ourselves. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Please allow me to speak in French, and I hope there is someone who is translating. If not, Mustafa, you can proceed. Merci, Monsieur le Gouverneur. D'abord, je voudrais remercier son honorable Raila Odinga, qui a été nommé par nos soins aux représentants de l'Union africaine sur la question du développement des infrastructures. Cette décision n'a pas été prise par hasard. C'est en tenant compte du background de M. Raila Odinga que nous l'avons choisi pour ses plaidoyers importants et stratégiques pour le continent africain. Je ne sais pas s'il y a traduction. Any translation? C'est toi? Le développement des infrastructures sont une priorité. Je dirais même la priorité des priorités dans le continent africain. L'Union africaine a élaboré une stratégie sur le développement prioritaire des infrastructures en Afrique. À travers le NEPAD et les autres institutions africaines. Le constat aujourd'hui est que le continent est très peu connecté. Nous avons mis en place la zone de libre-échange continentale. Elle ne pourrait jamais être totalement opérationnelle si l'on ne connecte pas physiquement les États et les communautés économiques régionales. C'est la raison pour laquelle une des conditions de la réalisation de ce grand marché, qui est la zone de libre-échange continentale, sa réalisation ne peut être possible qu'en développant de manière conséquente les infrastructures. Les routes, les chemins de fer, les ports et les aéroports, l'énergie, les ITC, tout ceci demande des investissements. Même si les études sont prêtes, les plans sont prêts, le problème qui se pose, c'est celui du financement. Question sur laquelle a travaillé l'honorable Raila Odinga. Comment mobiliser les ressources? Il faut d'abord mobiliser les ressources internes du continent africain. Notamment les fonds de pension qui sont très importants. comment mobiliser le secteur privé africain. Et enfin, comment développer des partenariats publics-privés et comment mobiliser nos partenaires extérieurs dans le cadre de doter le continent des infrastructures nécessaires. Voilà où se situe la problématique et c'est la raison pour laquelle je crois que l'honorable Raila Odinga est le spécialiste de la question et il a été chargé par l'Union africaine justement de trouver des pistes qui puissent nous permettre d'avancer sur ce dossier stratégique. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Makofi Kwake, please clap for him. Thank you very much. An issue, obviously, which the chairman has emphasized, which comes under the framework of the High Representative for the AU, and on which he has worked very hard, is mobilizing resources for infrastructure in Africa and coordinating planning across our nations, especially in the energy sector, where if we synergize and encourage our interdependence, we will have plenty of potential in Africa to generate power and therefore use it as an important source of development and infrastructure. Mobilization of resources and partnership is important. In this regard, let me now ask His Excellency Daniel Faure, former President of Seychelles, as a former president, what his experience was and when he reflects today, what to come together as Africa in this particular regard. Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think, first of all, we need to remind ourselves that on our continent, we have institutions, some excellent institutions. We have also created our own 3 banks. We have the Afri-Exim Bank, we have the Trade and Development Bank, and of course we have the African Development Bank. And the African Development Bank, since the year 2013, has been providing to all countries on the continent data on where we are in terms of infrastructure development. In fact, the first data came out in the year 2013, and the last one was in 2021. In fact, it covered the period 2018 to 2020. I think it's important that we back our intervention based on facts and data. And these data show us where we are in terms of levels of development. The next step, and this is my opinion, it is important that Africa chooses the right infrastructure that will have the effective impact on the continent. And I want to give 2 examples here. I was recently in Botswana, where I saw a new bridge that was built. The length of the bridge is 971 meters, and the bridge crosses Botswana into Zambia, but provides a hub in terms of trade to cover 2 other countries, and this is Zimbabwe and Namibia. Now, for me, this infrastructure is strategic, is important. So as we move forward on the continent, we need to look at other projects. And here in Kisumu, I've been told by the governor, our moderator. As you know, Kisumu sits on the Lake Victoria, and they have been building what is called a new maritime corridor that will help citizens of Eastern Africa. And this is very good. This is the type of strategic infrastructure that is needed for our continent. The challenge that we have after COVID is where will the resources come from? Because what COVID has taught us, that we remain very vulnerable. Apart from the number one threat to the continent, which is climate change, we have other threats on our continent. So this calls for united action. And here when I talk about united action under the African Union, in the presence of our chairman, I am talking of coordination. I think our approach on the ground should not be fragmented. I think our approach on the ground needs to be strategic, but well coordinated, so that the outcomes are beneficial to our nations and population. So in answering the question of the moderator, let us make use of the 3 banks that we have and ensure that we have bankable projects. I repeat, bankable projects that fall within the vision that we have for our continent. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. The issue of bankable projects, strategic planning, and making good choices will be based on getting information and the right data. Comparative data among African countries coordinated by the African Union and other inter-African institutions. In that regard, I'd like to call now Madam Mamouna Sharif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat, an organization which has been very key in getting data and using that data to transform urban centers, and also to encourage infrastructure across the nation so that these urban centers can synchronize with each other. Madam Sharif Mamouna.
Thank you very much, Honorable Governor, distinguished delegates. Thank you for having me and having UN Habitat on this panel. And we heard from the speeches this morning and also from the President's speech just now, we are facing now the 3 C's conflict: COVID-19, climate emergency, climate change, or whatever you say is climate refugees is happened now, and also the conflict and crisis. And all the 3 C's will end up in C's. What I mean, the other C is cities, because more than 70% of the population will be in city. And city, as we know, now the theme of today's Africities is the role of intermediate city. And city also consumes 70% of the energy and also produce or emit 70% of the carbon emission. But that's not only the negative part, but cities is also a place where the concentration of talent, concentration of technology, concentration of skill, and also the economic growth, the engine of economic growth. Let me bring back to the Africa. I would like to share with you 4 points. One is in the continent of Africa and also continent of Asia. These 2 continents have a very rapid urbanization and rapid demographic. Let me share with you a few data. It is only 1 century ago, the urban population in Africa is less than 8%. But now, it's more or less 65% to 70%. And in 2020, let me share with you with data. 2020, 587.7 million of people living in cities in Africa, compared to 556.6 million in Europe. And it's also that it's expected to be 1.4 million people will live in African cities by 2050. What does this mean? What is, when you hear this figure, what is the immediate thing that crosses into your mind? One is the provision of basic services. Basic services is the human right. For example, water, electricity, sanitation, health, housing. So I think it's due to what the President mentioned just now. I think the rise in the informal settlement. So to why people move from the rural area to the urban area? If they have the infrastructure in the rural area, maybe in a small scale, for example, they have the health facilities, they have the education facilities, they have employment, there's no reason for the young people and for people to move to the city areas or even to the metropolitan. So we need to look at the intermediary cities in the provision of basic services and infrastructure. Whatever that we have in the city areas, for example, education, health, banking, and hospital, so we should have that in intermediate cities and also in rural areas. And I would like to share with you from the UN Habitat Letters Assessment indicate that a very, very severe backlog of provision of public services. And COVID-19 is a wake-up call and is really a testimony to what we are lacking in terms of water. We ask the people to wash hands, but if they don't have water to drink, how can we ask them to wash their hands? So I think this is the gap that we have in many of the African cities. I've been to Burkina Faso, I've been to Mozambique, I've been to Senegal, and Cameroon and other cities. I think the basic services is infrastructure is very, very much in needs in these cities. And it's also would like to see that there is an improvement in terms of the slum condition. This is, for example, like now, in the year 200, 65% of the population live in slum, but in 2018, it's improved to 56%. But the number increased. The number of the people living in the informal settlement increased from 800 million to 1 billion. So, first point, rapid demographic trend in Africa. Second, lead to the lack of basic services. Why is it led to the lacking of basic services? I think we heard about the speech from the President because lack of planning. Unplanned and unmanageable cities, we should be linked to the urban sprawl. Where there is we cannot see the limit, where are the cities metropolitan and is linked to the cities. I think this is very, very crucial in Africa. My third point is that when you have unplanned and unmanaged cities, I'm very happy to hear that out of the 12 questions that asked by the President, and also in his speech, he believed in planning. I think this is very, very important to have the well-planned and well-managed cities. Due to this unplanned, that is the deficit in housing. Housing is a very, very important component because by having house and housing, it has the catalyst and as a ripple impact to other local services and to other local supply chains. Like if you have a housing development, you should have the energy, transport, mobility, electricity, education, health, and all that. So in Africa, 160 million affordable housing and adequate houses is needed today in the sub-Saharan Africa to meet the most urgent needs of urban population. So I think housing is very, very important. That's why UN Habitat's priority has been endorsed by the Executive Board, that is housing, climate change, and the localization of SDG is the main priorities for us. Let me go to the fourth things, that the gap in the financing for the infrastructure. The African Development Bank estimates that for Africa to keep up with its urbanizing towns and cities, it needs infrastructure financing 170 billion a year by 2025. This is the reality. We need 100 billion. The financing gap is 100 billion a year. So this is also hampering the development of Africa. What is it needed? I'm very, very happy to hear the President say that we need planning. What we need is that I would like to share with you three things. One, we need a strong leadership. We have a very visionary, strong leadership which are competent, accountable, transparent, effective, and efficient. Second is the governance, either at the local level or at the regional level, at the national level. The governance must be there. And the third is the capacity. The capacity, it can be the hardware and also the software. The hardware and the software is talent, technology, capacity, finance, and the hardware is of course the tools and the infrastructure. So I stop here. I will get any question that I will try to answer. Thank you so much, Honorable Governor. I pass back the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Madam Mamuna. One issue you have raised which is so important is how we harness the water resources of Africa, both rainwater, river water, ocean water, and so on. During COVID, water became the center of our life on a daily basis. Yes, so much of it is wasted in Africa. Would it be possible to have an African Union protocol for preservation of water and its use across the continent for irrigation, for drinking, and for sanitation, as we saw during COVID? That's a question worth asking. At this point in time, I'd like to ask any member of the panel who has a comment to make, from the comment for the colleagues, or a question to raise before we move to the next. You are okay. So any person from the audience? If not, let me consult with the Permanent Secretary to move to the another segment. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your role.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you shall bear with us just for a short while. We have a very important and special ceremony to perform now as the final act this morning to open this convention and this summit. I will therefore request, before we play the national anthem, to conclude the Secretary General of the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, my dear friend Jean-Pierre Longbassi, to come over and to give a special prize to a very special person, and that prize will be given to the person by the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya. Being the High Representative of the Chairman of the AU on infrastructure, a topic we have just discussed at this panel, it is important that my dear friend Danny Faure, the former president of Seychelles, crowns this occasion this morning by being recognized for something that's done special for Africa. Secretary General, I give the floor to you.
Excellency, sorry for my voice, sleepless nights. The United Cities and Local Government of Africa used to honor people that have served the cause of local Africa. Among the honorary members, we have former heads of states, members of UCAG Africa honorary members. As former head of state, you've got President Sisano, President Obasanjo, President Mbeki, President Pires, the late President Jerry Rawlings, President Nisofor Soglu. The Political Committee of Africities and UCAG Africa has chosen to honor the same way President Faure, because of what they have done for decentralization in Seychelles and the activities, and you witness his plea here for an Africa built from bottom up. So it is my honor to hand over to you the cordon that will be put through next.
No, thank you so much. And I want to really express my appreciation to the Executive Committee of UCLGA for honoring me today during this 9th edition of Africa Cities. It is a real honor, and I want to say thank you. And I want to dedicate the trophy and medal to the Seychelles people. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, again. First, I want to pass a vote of thanks for all the presenters that we've had here. First, our President, His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, who officially opened the meeting, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the panelists who are here before us. We really appreciate your time and the kind words that you've said to our delegates and setting the tone of the 9th Africities Summit. So we've come to an end to this session, and we will quickly go and cut the ribbon for the exhibition on the other end, and we hope Right Honorable the Raila Odinga, the Prime Minister, will lead us in that session. Thereafter, we will go on for lunch. And I would like to indicate as follows: the VVIP, our lunch is set just outside here. Then the VIP and leaders of delegation, the lunch will be at the back end. There will be ushers to guide us through. And then the rest of the delegates, the lunch will be served near the exhibition ground. So thank you so much. And then this afternoon session, as is under the schedule, will start at 2:30. So the plenary halls and the meeting rooms, you will be shown by our ushers. So thank you so much and welcome. So we proceed to the cutting of the ribbon of the exhibition, and then we proceed on lunch thereafter. Thank you. I'm told there is a national anthem. Can we stand, please? National anthem, play now. Who is playing? The national anthem. Okay.